50 miles apart. Jacob is taking care of the sheep that are fairly close to wherever Laban's at. Verse 37, Jacob, however, took fresh cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees, made white strips on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood of the branches. Then he placed the peeled branches in all the watering troughs so that they would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. When the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they made it in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. Jacob set apart the young of the flocks by themselves, and he made the rest face the streaked and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flocks for himself, and did not put them with Laban's animals. Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals, so they would mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he would not place them there, so the weak animals went to Laban and the strong ones to Jacob. In this way the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to his own large flocks and maidservants and men servants and camels and donkeys. So Jacob is getting extraordinarily wealthy here. And I don't think Laban figured it out until it was way too late to figure anything out. Now, what's interesting is when you look at the angel's vision to Jacob, does the angel say anything about doing stuff with branches and peeling the bark off so that some are white? Does the vision say anything about doing that?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. And I tried looking around because I was wondering if this was some type of breeding method that I knew nothing about. And from what I could find is that there doesn't appear to be any scientific basis for this particular thing that Jacob was doing. And nothing in the Bible declares that God told him to do that with the branches. The vision does not say that. It doesn't say it anywhere else that God told Jacob to do that, but Jacob does it. So the question might be, unless there's something I don't know about, is that just a cultural myth at that time of how they did things? I really can't say. I don't know the answer to it. But it doesn't really matter one way or the other, because the story does not state that God miraculously used the branches to aid Jacob. Is that true?
True.
Because God, yeah, it's true.
God
He
could
does.
have done it without the branches.
Yeah.
Jacob might have thought he was helping God out of using like a wives' tale, something like that.
Mhm.
But God could have done it without the branches.
Does God act miraculously to bring Jacob more dark-colored goats?
Yes.
Yes, he does. And the idea came from God. So God's involved in the process as far as bringing him more dark-colored sheep. It doesn't appear that the branches had anything to do with it, but there's another thing too that you can't ignore also, because this is a modern-day scientific method that people use even to this very day, and all of you are probably well aware of it. What is Jacob doing that modern people do as far as breeding practices with animals? There's a term for it.
Is it husbandry?
Kind of. I'm not sure the exact definition of husbandry, but I would call it selective breeding.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that with horses, dogs, pigs, sheep, any animal you want to breed. If you want to look for a certain characteristic in an animal, and people who are involved with animal husbandry know all about this. I mean, it's very scientific, and they use very scientific methods. And so it does appear that Jacob is clearly using selective breeding here. He's being very careful which animals get to breed with which animals. He's keeping the weak ones to the side. He's making, because in the scientific method here, in the DNA of the whole thing, dark colored sheep of any type, that is a recessive gene, which means it's not dominant. the dominant gene is white. But if you mix two sheep together that are colored, you're putting two recessive genes together, and it makes it much more likely that you're going to end up with colored animals. And that's exactly what Jacob was doing as time went on, and he made sure only the strong ones were doing all the breeding, and the weak ones were given to Jacob. And as a result, there's an explosion of population, with God aiding in the process also. So between selective breeding and God's miraculous blessing of Jacob, Jacob is becoming extremely wealthy now at this point. He's actually more wealthy than Laban at this point. I'm sure that's going to go over real well with Laban now, doesn't it? So, let's go on to chapter 31 now. Verse 1. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father. Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude towards him was not what it had been. I want you to think carefully. Is their statement true? Has Jacob taken anything from Laban?
No,
Why not?
because he was promised this. Well, he built the fortune. That didn't mean he owned it, but he made a deal and Laban agreed with it. He used his knowledge then to kind of tip the scale.
And in the beginning, how big was Laban's flocks?
Didn't have any.
He didn't hardly have anything. Everything he had was from the work of Jacob. Now, he may have owned the sheep, but everything after that was part of the agreement. So Jacob hasn't taken anything from Laban. It's just the way the deal worked out, and it's kind of hard to stop God in selective breeding. But if Laban had any brains at all, he would have been more involved in the whole process and would have noticed what was going on. And he could use the process himself after Jacob leaves and be blessed using selective breeding. I mean, I don't even know if he even knew what that was. Apparently, it doesn't seem that he did. So there is an attitude change now. Laban's sons are annoyed. And where do you think the first place they went when they make an accusation like this about Jacob? What's the first person they wanted to tell?
The dad.
The dad. Dad, you realize what's going on? And how do you think Laban's going to react? Favorably?
No.
No. Okay, let's go on and see what the scriptures describe this whole situation, because other people are going to get involved now too. Verse 5. Then the Lord said to Jacob, go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives. I will be with you. So at this point, God sees what's going on with Laban, and he says, Jacob, time to get out of town. Time to go back home. So verse 4, so Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were. Why does he tell them to come out there? Why don't you just go in the tent and tell them? Think about it.
Spies, who knows?
Huh?
He's got witnesses.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of
I was gonna
witnesses.
say spies.
There's kids, there's maidwives, there's servants. He's got a lot of them now. All he has to do, if he wants to make a clean getaway here, and you're going to see how he does it, this has to be kept quiet. And little ears have a way of saying things that if Laban finds out, it's going to be a big problem. So, verse 5, he says, he said to them, I see your father's attitude towards me is not what it was before. But the God of my father has been with me. You know that I've worked for your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks gave birth to speckled ones. And if he said the streaked ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked ones. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. Remember, originally the agreement was any animal that had any dark markings on them, spotted, speckled, streaked, they were all Jacob's. But what was Laban doing in the process of the 6-year period?
Taking them out.
Yeah, he said, nope, you don't get the spotted ones anymore. You can only have the streaked. And then when those start, now you only get this one. So that's why he says he's changed his wages 10 times. If you try to do that today with a modern agreement, today, when you have a modern business agreement, and one of the parties said, nope, I don't like the way it's going after you have an agreement signed and made legal, what's the other person gonna usually say?
Too bad, so sad.
Too bad, so sad. Call my lawyer.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work, and it didn't work back then either, because how does God, Jacob's lawyer, fix the situation?
Get them out of there.
He said, fine, you only gonna give Jacob the spotted ones or streaked ones?
Yeah.
I'll make that one come out, and then what are you gonna do then? So, he didn't say that, but I just.
Jeff, can you clarify for me, so when Laban separated the spotted and streaked and sent them away, those weren't Jacob's, right? He was simply, the agreement was any new sheep born in the flock that Jacob was tending, that those born streaked or spotted became Jacob's.
You know, it's a legitimate point, I'm not 100% positive, I got the feeling that they were his. And Laban's sons were to watch over them, but he didn't want to mix it in with Laban's sheep because that would increase the likelihood through breeding that more of the speckled and spotted would result into Laban's flocks.
But
I'm not
Jacob,
100% sure.
but Jacob responded to Laban's question about what do you want from me? He said nothing, as if to say, he wasn't asking for those existing spotted and streaked, but instead this proposition that he would take the pure white ones and then any new ones born would be his.
You could be correct. I'm not 100% sure, but
It's
It could be.
confusing though, because in verse 32, and I agree, but there's a colon, and then verse 32, it says, let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled spotted sheep and every black lamb and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So when they're talking, he says, let me walk through today and remove, and they shall be my wages, not their offspring shall be my wages. And then Laban almost immediately just tells his son, yeah, get them out of here.
okay.
So it seems like you shall not give me anything, maybe he meant money, but I want this part of the flock, because they were talking wages.
And even then, that still would have been a small
Yes.
minority
Yeah.
of the flock.
Yeah,
Because like I said, it's still, white is the dominant color.
right, but the word today doesn't imply their offspring.
Yeah, you could be right.
Um,
Either way, in the long run, God's blessing just overwhelms the whole situation to the point where Jacob becomes fabulously wealthy as a result of it. So in verse 9, verse 9 it says, God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. And this is Jacob talking to Laban's daughters. So if there's any loyalty to their father, it's going to come out now. Verse 10. In breeding season, I once had, okay, we already covered that. So we're going to skip that paragraph there because we already covered that. So, but Jacob explains to his wives why he did what he did. Why he came up with this deal, this plan. And he says it's from God. And they know that God speaks to Jacob. His wives know that. Verse 14, then Rachel and Leah replied, do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you to do. Whose side are they on? Jacob and God's side. They've had it with their dad. They know their dad is a crook. He's a thief, he's a liar, he's a con artist, and they've had it with him too, and they know that come inheritance time, what's gonna be their portion?
Nothing.
Goose egg.
Yeah.
They're not gonna get anything, and they know it, and Jacob knows it too, because that's gonna come out in the dialogue as we go along. Jacob has a fear of this, but he has faith in God. All right, so, verse 19. Verse 17. Then Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with the goods he had accumulated in Padam Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was running away. So he fled with all he had, and crossing the river, he headed for the hill country of Gilead. So, right away, how long do they wait to put this plan into action? Right away. They ain't messing around. They're getting out of town right away because the rumor mill has started. They know Laban's gonna react. They don't know how, but they know he's gonna react. They actually wait until Laban does what? They wait for a specific point.
Shearing the sheep.
Shearing of the sheep. That's a major operation if you're a shepherd. When it comes to time of the year of the shearing of sheep, that's it depends on the size of your flock, but that can be a couple days to a week to shear all these sheep. That's a lot of work. It's a heavily involved process. They're really involved. They're really distracted from everything else in the world. So they wait till their father goes off and does that. So he's going to be occupied for at least 3 days. Here's their chance. It's time to leave. So we're going to stop there because I don't want to get into this thing Rachel does here until next week, because it's going to take some explanation of what's going on here. But we'll start at verse 19, actually verse 20 next week. Any final questions or thoughts?
Cliffhanger.
Real quick, just going back to the dream, as far as the comment on, did he listen to the dream and follow instructions? It wasn't about the instructions. It was kind of like Joseph's dream of the famine, with fat cows, skinny cows. It wasn't how he did it. God was warning him and telling him this was going to happen. Same difference there. It wasn't that he disobeyed. He still showed faith in using those trees to put it into the water because he believed God was going to do that for him. And then
Right.
going to the point of the spotted and street sheep, Laban kept changing the deal and kept going through the flocks, even daily at times, because God kept switching it up on him, and he noticed, hey, he's got more flock than what I have, so he would keep changing the deal. It wasn't that a misunderstanding. It was the guy kept changing the deal on him. So he just kept, he noticed, hey, Jacob's got more sheep in his herd than I do, so he would keep changing the deal.
Yeah. Interesting story though, when you really look at it. It's kind of like a modern day drama here. So we'll see you next week.
Fill us with the strength. We are your church. We are the